Today I'd like to discuss the story of Iyov, or as he's known in English, Job. The book of Job is one of the 24 books of the Bible, and it describes a fascinating story of a tragedy that comes to teach us about one of the most fundamental questions about religion. And that is, why do bad things happen to good people? Why is it that people who do everything correctly end up sometimes suffering? And so it deals with this difficult question. And so let's get on with this story. Job is a wealthy man. He's remarkably successful. He has everything: children, wealth, prosperity, a good name. Everyone loves Job. It's almost as if Job was meant to write the book of why good things happen to good people. Not only is he prosperous and wealthy and has a lovely family and friends, but also he's always doing the right thing. He's righteous, he's good, he's kind, he's compassionate. And so Job is living this wonderful life of doing the right thing, of being charitable and helpful to others, and he's philanthropical, and really he's a model of why good things happen to good people. And so Job goes on to living his life, and the rabbis discuss the question of who is this Job and what time did he live in. Some say he lived in the time of Abraham, the patriarchs. Some say he lived later, in the time of Moses. Others say he lived in the times of the book of Judges or prophets. There's no clear decision on that. In fact, there's even an opinion that Job never really existed, and he was just the story is a parable meant to teach us about this question of why is it that bad things can happen to good people. But either way, Job is this Mr. Good doer, and he does everything right, and one day Satan comes to God, and God says to Satan, "Have you seen my servant Job? He is so righteous and kind and loyal and faithful. I think there's no one as good as he is all over the universe." And so Satan says, yeah, of course he's good, and of course he's kind, and of course he does the right thing, because he's learned that if you do the right thing, then you have good things happen to you. So yeah, why wouldn't he do good? It paid off for him. And you may wonder, why is it that God asks Satan this question? I mean, it's like asking someone what they think of their greatest enemy, saying, oh, what do you think about this person? Is he a good person? Well, of course the person's gonna try and poke some trouble. And so why is it that God is doing this? So in Jewish faith, Satan is not an entity separate from God. He's sort of like an antivirus program. He comes to check whether or not things are really genuine. He's coming to see if people are doing the right thing because they really mean it and because it's really a part of who they are. And so Satan says to God, yeah, of course, Job, he's doing the right thing because good things have happened to him. And so God says to Satan, you know what? Let's go test him. And so Satan goes, and one day Job is standing, having a good time with his friends, and someone comes over to him and says, I have terrible news for you. Your shepherds were out with your cattle, and armed criminals came and robbed them, took all your cattle, all of your shepherds, it's all gone. And the person has not completed what he has to say, and suddenly another person comes running in and says, Job, you will not believe what happened. He says, what? What happened? He says, your camels with all your personnel, it's all gone. It's been robbed by armed robbers, all gone. And he is shocked, and he doesn't even have time to process it. And suddenly, another person comes with the most terrible news any person can hear. And he tells him, Job, your 10 children were sitting in a party, and they were having a good time, and suddenly the roof came tumbling down, and they all got killed. And so Job hears this terrible news. He's just been deprived of all of his possessions, his means of transportation, his personnel, his very own children. And he sits down and he says words that are said to this day in many funerals around the world. He says, "The Lord has given and the Lord has taken. May the name of the Lord be blessed." So he recognizes that everything he has comes from God, and he does not sin. He remains faithful to God. And so the book goes on to describe the next meeting between God and Satan. And God says to Satan, "Look, you told me he won't really be faithful. And there he is. He was faithful. Everything was taken away from him, and yet he said, God has taken, God has given, he blessed God, and there's no problem. And so, look, here he is. He stood the test. Indeed, Job is truly faithful. He's not just faking it because good things happen to him. He's not just doing it because he knows that good things happen to good people. Look, in the face of this remarkable tragedy, he still believes in God and does the right thing." And Satan says, of course. Who wouldn't? He still has a healthy body. He knows that you're in control of everything. And so, yeah, of course he is, he's having faith in you because you give him his health, his life, ability to breathe and see and live. So yeah, he'll, try and make that money back, rebuild his family, but this is no proof. And so God says to Satan, you know what, you're a tough cookie, but, go for another shot, just don't kill him, but let's see what you can do. And so Satan goes out and strikes Job, and Job is covered now with boils, and is itching, and is sitting on the ground in pain, and clearly his pain and cracking faith are visible, and his wife tells him, just curse God out and die. She realizes what's going on in his heart. And he sits there, and his friends hear of his fate, and they come visit him. And the Talmud says that if anyone is to have friends, they should be blessed with friends like Job's friends. Such good, dedicated friends. They dropped everything. They come and sit with Job. And they sit with him for 7 days and 7 nights in silence. No one says a word. It's quiet. And that carries such a powerful lesson, because sometimes we see some friend or family member, anyone suffering and going through tragedy, and what's most important is to be there for them. What's most important is to be kind and compassionate and give them our support. But it's not always our job to speak. Sometimes they just need our support, and speaking can just hurt. So Job's friends come and they sit next to him for 7 days and 7 nights. And finally, Job goes on and says, "Cursed will be the day that I was born." And he goes on and he laments his fate. And the book goes on for nearly 40 chapters and speaks of the difficulties that Job has with faith. Job says, "I did everything correctly. How is it possible that God should punish me in this terrible way? How would I be punished if I am the one who has done everything correctly? I gave charity. I was kind to orphans and widows and the oppressed. I was nice and devout and had faith. Why would God do this to me?" And it really strikes at the heart of the question of why is it that bad things happen to good people? And Job's friends take turns and they answer him and they suggest answers and they say, well, maybe you sinned a bit. Who is it? Who's perfect after all? Or maybe there's this reason or that reason. And he goes on and debates them back and forth, chapter after chapter after chapter. And he does not accept anything that they say. And finally, God shows up. God reveals himself. It's the moment Job has been waiting for. And first, before anything, before answering Job's unbelievably important question, God speaks to Job's friends and says, really? Is this a way to answer him? And I think, to me, that answer is the core of the book of Job. The book of Job isn't just about the theological question of why is it that bad things may happen to good people. The core of the book of Job is about how to overcome adversity. It's how to overcome tragedy and illness and difficulties. And the first lesson is not a lesson to Job. It's a lesson to his friends. You're his friends. You should have been more sympathetic. Telling someone who's suffering so much, well, you suffered because you sinned, is unacceptable. God says to Job's friends, don't do me favors. You're not representing me. I'm okay. What Job needs at this time more than anything is sympathy. And so the book is a lesson about sympathy and overcoming tragedy. And so the lesson number 1 of the book is to Job's friends, yes, you were good friends. Yes, of course you were helpful and compassionate and kind. And of course you showed up and helped him. But telling him that it's because of his sins, it's not really the correct answer. You should have just held his hand, be there for him. And so then the book goes on to describe God's answer. And God tells Job, listen, look around you. You see the universe, the galaxies, the animal kingdom. They all work in such perfect harmony, such brilliant wisdom, such astonishing coordination and intricacy. Do you think all that is by accident? Do you think I was able to design this world with all its galaxies and molecules and temperatures and climate and animal kingdom and the way everything is such a perfect balance, the water, the dry land, everything is just so perfect, the winds, the storms. Do you think I did all of that and I can't figure out how to give you what you deserve? And so the takeaway message is difficult. God doesn't really explain why it is that bad things happen to good people. But ultimately, there are 2 major components to his answer. One is that a person needs to see themselves as part of a greater picture. Sometimes we look at our narrow own path and say, well, why is this happening to me? I know this, and this. And God's answer is, well, things are much more complicated. You're part of a world. You're part of a society. You're part of a history. And so to assume that you know everything and based on that to be too frustrated with me is out of place, because the world is much larger and more complicated than that. And it's impossible to answer every single individual and their circumstance because we're all part of such a larger picture. The other answer, in my opinion, is an answer to Job and everyone that's going through a difficult time. Sometimes being angry with God is not the answer. Studies show that people who are angry with God end up being more depressed and have a difficulty overcoming challenges. And so God says, what's most important for you, Job, is now to overcome your difficulties and focus on the future. Yeah, the world is complicated. We won't know everything. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be optimistic. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try. That doesn't mean you shouldn't push forward and really try and thrive and recover. And I know it's hard, and I know it's difficult, and I know you lost everything, and you're sick, and you're itchy, and you're filled with boils. But still, put your eyes on the future. And so it says that after that, God healed Job, and Job got double the wealth that he had. He rebuilt his family, and he lived a happy life. But the lesson of Job, in its bottom line, is a lesson about empathy, a lesson about moving forward, and a lesson about seeing us as part of a larger picture. Thank you so much for listening. Please feel free to leave questions in the comments section, and I'll do my best to answer you as soon as possible.